My name was Hannah Miller. I was 30 years old, sitting in a polished oak courtroom in San Diego, watching my sister smile at me like this was all still a game she expected to win. The room smelled faintly of old wood and floor polish. Money, order, respectability, everything my family cared about. The bailiff called the next witness. Dr. Evan Carlisle. That was when Brooke's smirk finally flickered, not gone, just cracked. A hairline fracture in the confidence she wore so easily. 3 months earlier, she had stood in our parents' marble kitchen, sunlight bouncing off granite countertops, and poured a full glass of water over my seizure medication. I remembered the sound, the soft clatter of pills, the liquid turning cloudy as I froze, my breath caught somewhere in my chest. "Stop pretending," she'd laughed. "You just want attention." Everyone at the table had laughed with her. My parents didn't stop her, no one did, they just watched me swallow my humiliation instead. Now my neurologist adjusted his tie, raised his right hand, and took the oath. I folded my shaking hands in my lap and thought about how close I'd come to dying that night, how small my life had felt in that kitchen, how little my safety had mattered to the people who were supposed to protect me. This wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about truth. Brooke laughed as the pills dissolved into cloudy water. It was loud, sharp, the kind of laugh that demanded attention. Everyone looked at her instead of me, which was exactly how she liked it. We were gathered around the long marble island in my parents' kitchen for Sunday brunch, linen napkins, fresh-cut flowers, mimosas sweating in crystal glasses. Their house sat on a quiet hill in San Diego, all glass and cream-colored stone, the kind of place where nothing ugly was supposed to happen. I'd arrived early like I always did. I kept my seizure medication zipped inside the small pocket of my purse, checking it twice before sitting down. Habit, fear, survival. I'd learned not to trust anyone else with it. Brooke leaned against the counter across from me, perfectly styled as usual, hair smooth, smile effortless. She had always known how to own a room without trying. "So," she said casually, lifting her glass, "are you still doing the whole thing?" I knew what she meant. I didn't answer. She stepped closer, pretending to stumble. The first splash of water hit my purse. An accident, technically. I flinched and grabbed it, heart racing. "Oops," she said, not sorry at all. I stood, unzipping the pocket with shaking fingers. The bottle was wet. My stomach dropped. Before I could move, Brooke tipped her glass again, slow this time, deliberate. Water streamed directly into my open purse, soaking the bottle, the pills rattling as they spilled onto the counter. They skidded and rolled, white against stone, dissolving as the water pooled around them. I froze, completely still. "Stop pretending," she laughed. "You just want attention." The words landed harder than the water. My mother sighed like I'd inconvenienced her. "Hannah, don't start." My dad didn't look up from his plate. "It's brunch," he said. "Let's not make this dramatic." I stared at the ruined pills, my chest tight, ears ringing. I opened my mouth to explain, to say this wasn't optional, this wasn't a phase, this was my life, but nothing came out. Brooke smirked, victorious. "Relax," she said. "You're fine, you always are." No one defended me, no one even asked if I was okay. They just went back to their food, their conversations, their comfort. I cleaned up the pills myself, threw them away in silence, sat back down like nothing had happened, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. That night, alone in my apartment, I felt it, the subtle warning signs I knew too well, the dizziness, the buzzing under my skin, the sense that something was slipping. I reached for my medication and realized I had none left. I woke up on a cold bathroom floor with my mother crying over me. At first, I couldn't tell where I was. The ceiling light flickered above me, too bright, stabbing at my eyes. My tongue felt thick. My muscles burned like I'd run a marathon in my sleep. Somewhere nearby, a toilet flushed, and the sound made my head throb. "Hannah," my mother said, her voice shaking. "Oh my God, Hannah." I tried to speak, but my jaw wouldn't cooperate. All I could do was blink. The paramedics arrived fast, too fast. I remembered the weight of hands turning me onto my side, the snap of latex gloves, the sharp smell of antiseptic. Someone asked how long I'd been seizing. My mother didn't know. She kept saying she just found me like this. Ambulance ride blurred together, sirens, straps across my chest, oxygen hissing near my face. I stared at the ceiling and thought about the pills dissolving on the marble counter, about how calm Brooke had looked while it happened. In the ER, the lights were harsh and unforgiving. Nurses moved around me with practiced urgency. A doctor asked when I'd last taken my medication. "Yesterday morning," I whispered. His expression changed immediately. "You missed a full dose." I nodded. He exhaled slowly. "That's dangerous." They ran tests. Monitors beeped. My body trembled long after the seizure had ended, like it was still trying to remember how to feel normal. The doctor returned with a clipboard and a serious look. "A breakthrough seizure like this can be fatal," he said. "Especially if it happens alone. You're lucky someone found you." Lucky, my mother squeezed my hand harder, guilt finally seeping into her face. Brooke didn't come to the hospital. Instead, she called relatives. I heard about it later from my aunt, from a cousin, from the soft judgment in their voices. Brooke told them I'd worked myself up, that I'd skipped my meds because I was stressed, that I had a history of overreacting. She just wants attention, Brooke said apparently, again. I was discharged after midnight with a temporary prescription and strict instructions. No missed doses, no stress, no excuses. Back in my apartment, I lay awake listening to my own heartbeat, afraid to fall asleep. My phone buzzed around 2 in the morning, a text from Brooke, "Next time, don't fake it." I stared at the screen until it blurred. That was the moment something in me shifted quietly, permanently. This wasn't the first time Brooke had played with my health. That realization came to me slowly, like a bruise surfacing days after the impact. I lay in bed replaying the past, not just the kitchen, not just the seizure, but all the moments I'd dismissed because it was easier than calling them what they were. The first time I was diagnosed, Brooke had rolled her eyes. "So now you're fragile?" she'd asked, smiling like it was a joke. When I asked her to remind me about my meds during a family trip to Napa, she'd said she forgot. Twice. I'd woken up dizzy both mornings and she'd shrugged. "You should be more responsible." At Christmas 2 years ago, I'd searched for my pill case for 20 minutes while everyone waited to leave for dinner. Brooke found it tucked behind the coffee maker. "Weird," she'd said. "Maybe you moved it and forgot." Everyone laughed. I laughed too because that was easier than standing there shaking. She loved rewriting the story. If I was tired, I was dramatic. If I was careful, I was controlling. If I got sick, it was inconvenient. Over time, even I started to question my own memory. Maybe I was exaggerating. Maybe I really was the problem. Maya didn't think so. We sat across from each other in her small apartment, coffee going cold between us. She listened without interrupting, her expression tightening with every example I gave. "Hannah," she said finally, "this isn't teasing. It's a pattern." I looked down at my hands. "She's my sister. That doesn't make it harmless," Maya said. "It makes it worse." She worked as a paralegal. Facts were her love language. "You need to start writing everything down," she continued. "Dates, texts, witnesses, screenshots, even things from the past if you remember them." I hesitated. Documenting it made it real, dangerous. That night I went home and opened an old backup folder on my laptop, years of forgotten messages and voicemails I'd never deleted. I didn't know what I was looking for until I heard her voice. Brooke, laughing, irritated. "I swear," she said, "if she actually took care of herself, I wouldn't have to teach her these little lessons." The timestamp was from 2 years earlier. I sat there in the dark, phone pressed to my ear, heart pounding. She had never meant me to hear it. Her voice shook, not with guilt but annoyance. I replayed the voicemail 3 times, sitting on the edge of my bed with the lights off, the glow of my phone the only thing cutting through the dark. Brooke sounded inconvenienced, irritated that I existed in a way she couldn't control. "I mean, honestly," she said on the recording, laughing under her breath, "if she actually took care of herself, I wouldn't have to teach her these little lessons. She milks it. Someone has to call her out." The words felt surgical, precise. There was no panic in her voice, no fear, just certainty. My hands trembled as I forwarded the voicemail to Maya. She called me immediately. "Hannah," she said carefully, "this isn't just cruel, this could be criminal." I swallowed. "What do you mean? Interfering with someone's prescribed medication, especially when you know the risks?" She didn't soften it. "That can be considered criminal negligence, possibly worse." The room felt smaller. I'd spent years minimizing what Brooke did because naming it felt disloyal. But hearing the law applied to her behavior, clean, objective, unemotional, changed everything. Maya told me to save backups, cloud storage, email copies to myself, "Don't tell anyone yet." "But my parents," I started. "They deserve to know," Maya said, "but be prepared. People don't like truths that threaten their comfort." She was right. I went to my parents' house the next afternoon. Same spotless kitchen. Same marble counters, everything exactly where it had been when my pills dissolved. I played the voicemail, my mother's mouth tight. My father crossed his arms. "That's taken out of context," my mother said quickly. My dad shook his head. "Brooke jokes, you know that." She admitted to it, I said, my voice cracked despite myself. "She said she taught me a lesson." My mother sighed, already tired. "Hannah, why are you doing this? Why are you trying to make her look like a monster?" "I'm not," I said. "I'm trying to stay alive." Silence filled the room, but it wasn't supportive, it was uncomfortable, defensive. My father stood. "Enough," he said. "We are not turning this into a legal situation. Families don't do that to each other." I realized then that they weren't choosing Brooke. They were choosing peace over truth, and they expected me to disappear quietly so they could keep it. As I walked out, my phone buzzed. A message from Brooke. "You really don't know when to stop, do you?" Brooke cried on cue. Everyone believed her. She sat on the cream-colored sofa in my parents' living room, knees tucked in, mascara just slightly smudged, enough to look authentic, not enough to look messy. It was a performance she'd perfected over years. Vulnerable, wounded, wronged. "I don't even understand how we got here," she said, her voice trembling. "I was just joking. I would never hurt Hannah. She knows that." She didn't look at me when she said my name. My mother handed her a tissue. My aunt rubbed her back. Brooke sniffed, shoulders shaking, and I felt something in my chest tight, not sadness. Recognition. This was how she won. I stood near the window, arms wrapped around myself, the afternoon light casting long shadows across the Persian rug. Everyone had been called parents, aunts. Brooke's husband, Mark, who stared at the floor like he didn't want to be involved. "I almost died," I said quietly. The room shifted, but only for a moment. "Hannah," my mother said, exhausted already, "no one wants to hear accusations." "They're not accusations," I said. "There's proof." Brooke gasped like I'd slapped her. "See," she said, tears spilling now. "This is what I mean. She's always doing this, turning everything into a crisis." My father stood, his jaw set. "You're tearing this family apart," he said to me, not to her. "Do you have any idea how this looks?" I stared at him. "Looks." He gestured around the room. "Lawyers, recordings, medical drama. It's embarrassing." "Embarrassing. If you keep pushing this," he continued, lowering his voice, "don't expect us to keep supporting you, financially or otherwise." The threat hung in the air: rent, help, insurance. Safety nets I hadn't realized were conditional. Brooke glanced at me then, just once. Her eyes were dry, her mouth curved barely. I understood the message. Drop it, or lose everything. No one spoke up for me, not one person. I left without saying goodbye, my hands shaking so badly I dropped my keys twice before I could unlock my car. I drove home on autopilot, heart pounding, replaying every word. By the time I got to my apartment, the decision had already been made. That night I sat on my bed, opened my laptop, and searched for one thing: medical malpractice and negligence, attorney, San Diego. And then I made the call. Dr. Carlisle didn't hesitate when I told him the truth. He sat across from me in his office, hands folded neatly on the desk, listening in a way I wasn't used to, without interrupting, without minimizing, without looking for a polite way to move on. The room smelled faintly of coffee and antiseptic, a strange comfort after months of feeling like no one believed me. "I need to explain something," I said, my voice tight. "My seizure wasn't a mistake. My medication was ruined, on purpose." He didn't react, he just nodded once. "Tell me exactly what happened." So I did. The brunch, the water, the laughter, the text message afterward. I showed him the voicemail, my hands shaking as I held out my phone. He listened to the entire thing, jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. "When did this occur?" he asked. 3 months ago, and she knew the risks." "Yes." He leaned back in his chair, exhaled slowly. "Hannah, missing a dose like that could have killed you, especially given your history." Hearing it said so plainly, without excuses, without emotional cushioning, made my chest ache. "I'm documenting all of this," he continued. "In detail, timeline, intent, medical consequences." I blinked. "You are?" "Yes," he said simply, "because it matters." He typed while I watched, every keystroke feeling like validation. He included the ER visit, the breakthrough seizure, and the increased risk I now carried because of it. Then he looked at me again. "If this goes further," he said, "I'm willing to testify." I hadn't asked him to. The offer landed heavier than anything else that day. "Thank you," I whispered. A week later my attorney called. Papers were ready, claims filed, evidence attached. That afternoon, Brooke was served. She called me immediately, screaming this time, no tears, no softness. "You are unbelievable," she shouted. "You think you can do this to me?" I held the phone away from my ear, heart steady for the first time in weeks. "Yes," I said quietly, "I can." The line went dead, and I knew there was no going back. Brooke wore white to the deposition. Not cream, not off-white, bright, deliberate white, tailored blazer, silk blouse, polished heels. She looked like someone attending a charity luncheon, not answering questions under oath. When she walked into the conference room, she smiled at everyone like this was her stage. At me, she didn't smile at all. She sat across the table, crossed her legs, and leaned back like she was bored. Her lawyer whispered something to her. She laughed softly, loud enough for me to hear. "This is such a waste of time," she said. Outside that room, she was louder. On social media, Brooke framed the lawsuit as a joke. Vague posts about toxic siblings and people who fake illnesses for sympathy. Friends commented with laughing emojis. Someone wrote, "Stay strong, Queen." I stopped looking after that. Inside the deposition, the tone shifted. Her attorney asked questions gently at first, about brunch, about the pills, about what she knew. "I didn't mean to spill the water," Brooke said smoothly. "It was an accident." And the second pour, my attorney asked, she shrugged. "I was trying to clean it up." Dr. Carlisle's report sat on the table between us, highlighted and tabbed. Are you aware, my attorney continued, that missing this medication can cause a life-threatening seizure? Brooke hesitated just a beat too long. I mean, she said, she's always been dramatic, she's fine most of the time. The court reporter's fingers flew across the keyboard. Medical facts were introduced. Timelines, ER records. Her confidence wavered as she contradicted herself, first saying she didn't know the risks, then admitting she'd read the prescription label before, her lawyer's jaw tight. When it was over, Brooke walked past me without a word. Her smile was gone. 2 days later, my attorney called. They're not settling, she said, and after that testimony, they shouldn't be confident. My stomach flipped. So what happens now? She paused. We're going to trial. I hung up and stared out my window, watching traffic move below like nothing in the world had changed. But everything had, because now it was public, and there was no hiding from the truth anymore. I avoided looking at her until she laughed. The courtroom was colder than I expected, not just the air but the feeling of it. Stone walls. High ceilings, the quiet authority of a place where stories were stripped down to facts and consequences. I sat at the plaintiff's table, hands folded so tightly in my lap my fingers ached. Brooke sat across from me, relaxed, legs crossed, whispering to her lawyer like this was a networking event. When our eyes almost met, I looked away. I didn't trust myself to see her without shaking. The judge entered, everyone stood, everyone sat, opening arguments began. My attorney spoke first, calm, precise. She laid out the timeline, my diagnosis, my prescription, the brunch, the ruined medication, the seizure, the hospital. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Every word landed with intention. Then it was Brooke's turn. Her lawyer stood with confidence, hands open, voice warm. He painted Brooke as careless, not cruel. A misunderstanding, a joke taken too seriously, a sister who loved me but was now being punished for it. I felt my face burn. Brooke nodded along, lips pressed together like she was holding back emotion. At one point, she let out a soft laugh, quick, dismissive, when her lawyer mentioned overreaction. That was when I looked at her. She caught my eye and smiled, not kind, not nervous. Sir, my heart slammed against my ribs. I wanted to run. I wanted to disappear back into the life where I swallowed everything and survived quietly. The judge leaned forward. Counsel, he said, you're suggesting the defendant was unaware of the medical risks. Yes, Your Honor, Brooke's lawyer replied. My attorney stood immediately. We intend to prove otherwise, with medical documentation and expert testimony. Brooke's smile faltered. Her lawyer objected. We move to limit medical testimony. This is becoming speculative. The judge didn't even look at him for long. Denied, he said. Given the nature of the allegations, full medical testimony will be allowed. The sound of the gavel echoed like a gunshot. I exhaled shakily. For the first time since this started, I felt the ground steady beneath me. My attorney turned slightly toward me and nodded. Just once, the bailiff stood. Plaintiff calls their first witness. My stomach dropped even though I knew it was coming. Dr. Evan Carlisle. I watched as my neurologist stood, straightened his jacket and walked toward the stand. Calm, measured, unafraid. Behind him, Brooke stiffened, and for the first time she didn't look amused. Without that medication, he said, she could have died. Dr. Carlisle's voice was steady, not dramatic, not emotional, just factual, and somehow that made it worse for Brooke. He sat upright on the witness stand, hands folded, eyes focused on the judge as if nothing else in the room mattered. The oath had barely settled before my attorney began. Doctor, can you explain to the court Hannah's condition? Dr. Carlisle nodded. Hannah has epilepsy. Her seizures are controlled by daily medication. Missing even a single dose significantly increases the risk of a breakthrough seizure. He explained it simply, clearly, no medical jargon to hide behind. He talked about how the medication worked, what happened when it wasn't taken, and how quickly things could escalate. And what are the risks? My attorney asked. Injury, he said, loss of consciousness, in severe cases, death. The word hung in the air. I felt my throat tight, but I didn't look away. Based on your records, she continued, what happened on the night of Hannah's seizure? Dr. Carlisle glanced down at the file. She suffered a breakthrough seizure consistent with missed medication. She was alone. If she hadn't been found when she was, the outcome could have been fatal. Across the room, Brooke's lawyer shifted in his seat. Doctor, he said, standing quickly, isn't it true that patients sometimes forget doses on their own? Yes, Dr. Carlisle replied. But that's not what happened here. The lawyer paused. How can you be sure? Because the patient reported intentional interference, Dr. Carlisle said calmly, and because there is corroborating evidence. Brooke's lawyer cleared his throat. But you weren't present at this brunch, were you? No, Dr. Carlisle said, but intent doesn't require presence, it requires knowledge. The lawyer frowned. Knowledge of what? Of the risks, Dr. Carlisle said. Which, according to prescription records and patient history, the defendant was aware of. There it was. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Dr. Carlisle went on to explain how labels, warnings, and prior conversations made the danger unmistakable. How pouring water over medication wasn't a prank, it was interference. Brooke stared straight ahead now. Her face had gone pale. My attorney approached the stand again. "Doctor," she said, "does medical science support the idea that this was harmless?" "No," he answered without hesitation. "It was dangerous." Silence followed, heavy, final. Then my attorney turned toward the judge. "Your Honor, at this time we would like to enter additional evidence." She held up a phone, a voicemail left by the defendant. Brooke's head snapped up. Her lawyer shot to his feet. "Objection!" The judge raised a hand. "Overruled. The evidence will be admitted." My heart began to race as the bailiff took the phone. I knew what was coming, and so did Brooke. As the audio equipment was prepared, she finally looked at me, not smirking, not smiling, afraid. For the first time, Brooke looked scared. Not angry, not offended, not performatively wounded, genuinely scared. The courtroom went completely still as the bailiff adjusted the audio. No shuffling papers, no coughing, even the judge leaned back slightly, hands folded, waiting. The recording began. Brooke's voice filled the room, too loud, too clear. "I swear if she actually took care of herself, I wouldn't have to teach her these little lessons." A nervous laugh followed, familiar, casual. "She milks it. Someone has to call her out." The words echoed off the walls, stripped of context, stripped of excuses. There was no sarcasm to hide behind, no misunderstanding to explain away, just intent. I stared straight ahead, my heart pounding, every muscle locked in place. I didn't look at my parents, I didn't look at the gallery, I didn't need to. Brooke's lawyer slowly lowered himself into his chair. The voicemail ended. Silence swallowed the room. It wasn't dramatic, silent. It was worse. It was the kind that settles when everyone realizes they can't unhear something. The judge broke it. "Ms. Miller," he said, his voice measured but sharp, "do you recognize that voice?" Brooke swallowed. "Yes." "Is that you?" A pause, a breath. "Yes." The judge nodded once. "Do you understand the severity of interfering with life-sustaining medication?" Brooke opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. "I didn't think that," the judge interrupted, "is precisely the problem." His tone shifted then, less procedural, more severe. "This court takes allegations of medical interference seriously," he continued. "And based on the evidence presented, this behavior appears not only reckless but malicious." The word landed like a sentence all on its own. Brooke's face crumpled, not into tears, into disbelief, like the world had just refused to bend for her. Her lawyer whispered frantically, but it didn't matter anymore. The judge looked down at his notes. "I will be reviewing the evidence in full before issuing my ruling." He glanced at me for the first time. "Ms. Miller," he said, "you are fortunate to be alive." My chest tightened. I nodded, unable to speak. Court was adjourned for the day. As people stood, Brooke didn't move. She just sat there, staring at the table where her confidence had finally cracked beyond repair. I walked past her without stopping. For once, she didn't follow, and as the courtroom doors closed behind me, I knew the end was coming. The verdict was no longer a question, it was a countdown. The ruling was calm, final, unforgiving. There was no dramatic pause, no speech about morality or family. The judge simply read from the page in front of him, his voice even almost gentle. That was what made it devastating. He ruled in my favor. He cited the medical testimony, the voicemail, the pattern of behavior. He used words like reckless, knowing, preventable. He ordered financial damages to cover medical costs, emotional distress, and ongoing treatment. He granted a protective order, clear boundaries, legally enforced. Brooke sat frozen, staring straight ahead as if she hadn't heard a word. "This court finds," the judge concluded, "that the defendant's actions placed the plaintiff at serious risk of harm. That risk was unnecessary, and it was avoidable." The gavel came down once. That was it. No applause, no cheers, just the quiet sound of something ending. I exhaled slowly, realizing I'd been holding my breath for months. When the judge stood and exited, the room stirred back to life. Lawyers gathered papers, people whispered, chairs scraped against the floor. I stayed seated for a moment, grounding myself, letting the reality settle into my bones. I was safe. Across the aisle, something I never expected happened. My parents turned toward Brooke, not toward me, toward her. My father's face was gray, his mouth drawn tight in a way I'd never seen before. My mother spoke first, her voice low but sharp enough to cut. "How could you?" she asked. Brooke looked up, eyes wide. "You don't understand." "No," my father said, interrupting her. "We didn't want to." The words hung there, heavy and overdue. "You went too far," my mother said. "This wasn't teasing, this wasn't family drama." Brooke stood abruptly, her chair tipping back. "So now you're all against me." No one answered. That silence was her answer. She grabbed her bag, hands shaking, and looked around like she expected someone, anyone, to stop her, to fix it, to smooth it over like always. No one did. As she walked toward the exit, she passed me. For a second, I thought she might say something. Apologize, lash out, beg. She didn't. She just walked past, heels clicking too fast, shoulders hunched, eyes on the floor. Brooke left the courtroom alone. I watched the doors close behind her, not with triumph, but with clarity. Justice hadn't raised its voice. It hadn't needed to, and for the first time in my life, I felt something I'd never been allowed to feel before: peace. I didn't feel victorious. I felt free. The weeks after the trial were quieter than I expected. No dramatic apologies. No sudden family reunions, just space, clean, unfamiliar space where fear used to live. I moved my medication to a lockbox, not because I was afraid anymore, but because I was allowed to be careful without explaining myself. I set alarms on my phone and kept backup doses in my car, my desk, my coat pocket. Not paranoia, preparation. My body settled slowly. Sleep came easier. My hands stopped shaking when my phone buzzed. For the first time since my diagnosis, my health felt like something I owned, not something people debated. I set boundaries and kept them. I stopped attending events where I was tolerated instead of protected. I answered fewer calls. I let silence do the work I'd been forcing myself to do for years. My parents tried in their way, awkward conversations, apologies that came too late to fix everything but early enough to matter. I accepted what felt honest and left the rest behind. Brooke didn't reach out. I heard through others that she was angry, that she felt betrayed. That she still thought she was right. That wasn't my burden anymore. Justice hadn't fixed my family. It hadn't erased the years of doubt or the damage done to my trust. But it had done something more important. It had made me safe. It had told the truth out loud in a room where lies couldn't hide behind charm or laughter. It had put my life back in my own hands. One afternoon, months later, I sat on my balcony watching the sun dip behind the buildings. The city hummed below, cars, voices, life moving forward whether I was ready or not. For once, I was. I thought about the kitchen, the pills dissolving, the laughter. Then I thought about the courtroom, the silence, the truth. I understood something then, finally. Justice isn't revenge, it's dignity, it's safety. It's the quiet freedom of knowing you don't have to beg to be believed. Some families teach you love, others teach you survival. And sometimes surviving is how you learn who you really are. Subscribe for more stories of truth and justice.